"Don't let her play that thing again," Vivian Mercer said. Too fast. The family courtroom froze with Emma Brooks halfway out of her chair and the child welfare aide's hand already resting on her shoulder. Behind her, Caleb Brooks stood in his faded denim jacket, both palms raised because the clerk had just warned him not to move toward his daughter. Emma set a cracked purple phone on the table. The screen glowed, "Mom, final voicemail." "Mom said I stay here," she whispered. 37 minutes earlier, the room had not been quiet at all. It had been full of paper sounds, soft shoes, controlled voices, and the dry scrape of wooden chairs against polished floor. Fluorescent lights buzzed above the seal of Franklin County Family Court, making every face look tired and every mistake look official. Caleb sat at the small table on the left, his old cap folded between his hands. There was still a faint smell of motor oil in the cuffs of his jacket, no matter how hard he had scrubbed before dawn. Beside him, Emma sat with her backpack hugged against her chest, the purple phone tucked deep inside the front pocket, where her fingers kept checking it like a heartbeat. Across the aisle, Vivian Mercer looked perfect in a cream coat, pearl earrings, and grief arranged so neatly it almost seemed rehearsed. Her lawyer, Miles Grant, did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He laid photographs on the table one by one, each inside a clear plastic sleeve. Caleb asleep behind the wheel of his tow truck. Caleb's kitchen with dishes on the counter. Emma sitting alone outside a school office. "Your Honor," Miles said gently, "this is not about whether Mr. Brooks loves his daughter. It is about whether love can compensate for instability." Caleb swallowed. His thumb pressed into the brim of his cap until the fabric bent. He wanted to say that he had slept in the truck after a night call near the children's clinic, so he could make Emma's morning appointment on time. He wanted to say the kitchen was messy because Emma had been making a birthday card for a mother who would never come home. He wanted to say the school hallway photo was taken while he was signing paperwork 5 feet away. But every explanation sounded smaller than the photographs. "Being tired is not the same as being unsafe," he said. The judge looked at him, not cruelly but carefully, the way people look when they have too much power and too little time. Rita Coleman, the social worker, read from her report in a flat voice. "The child has experienced night terrors after therapy and appears emotionally conflicted in the father's home." At the back of the room, Dr. Lena Ortiz lifted her head. Just a little. Caleb saw it because he had learned, over years of repairing engines, that the smallest wrong sound usually mattered first. Vivian lowered her eyes and dabbed a tissue beneath one corner, but she nodded at the phrase "night terrors after therapy" before Rita finished reading it. Caleb looked from Vivian to the report, then back to Dr. Ortiz. That phrase was not something a grandmother should know. It belonged behind a clinic door, in a file Emma had never even seen. Miles slid another paper forward. "Mrs. Mercer can provide a private bedroom, a stable schedule, and immediate support." Vivian's voice trembled perfectly. "I am only trying to protect my granddaughter." Emma's hand disappeared into her backpack. Caleb noticed the movement and shook his head once, not to silence her, but to spare her. She was 8. She should have been worrying about spelling tests and missing teeth, not adults arguing over where her grief belonged. Then the judge took a breath, and the room seemed to lean toward the sound. "Temporary emergency placement will be granted pending further review." The words landed before Caleb understood them. The aide stepped toward Emma. Caleb stood too quickly, then stopped when the clerk warned him. That was when Emma pulled out the purple phone. And before anyone heard Maya's voice, Caleb saw Vivian's face change at the sight of the screen. Vivian's face changed for less than a second, but Caleb saw it the way a mechanic sees a hairline crack before the whole engine fails. Her mouth tightened. Her fingers closed around the clasp of her cream-colored purse. Then Miles Grant stepped between the phone and the judge as smoothly as if he had practiced the movement in a mirror. "Your Honor, Counselor, sit down. This is improper." The courtroom air thinned. Emma's thumb hovered over the glowing screen, and the old purple case looked almost childish against the polished table, with its cracked corner and the little silver star sticker she had pressed there after Maya's funeral. Caleb kept his palms open at shoulder height. He did not tell Emma to stop, He did not tell her to play it. He only looked at her, steady enough for both of them, while the child welfare aide shifted behind her with one hand still near Emma's backpack strap. The judge held up one hand. No recording will be played until I understand what it is and whether it belongs in this record. Miles exhaled through his nose, relieved too quickly. Vivian dabbed her eyes with a tissue that had not yet become wet. Caleb lowered his hands slowly. His cap was still on the floor beside his chair where he had dropped it when the order came down. Nobody picked it up. A man in a suit stepped over it to pass a folder to the clerk, and the brim bent under his shoe for half a breath before Caleb reached down and lifted it like it was something living. "Mr. Brooks," the judge said, not unkindly, "I need you to remain composed." "I am composed." "Then let the court proceed." "She's 8. The judge's eyes moved from him to Emma, then back to the paperwork. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, filling the silence with a cold mechanical sound. Caleb pressed the crushed brim back into shape with his thumb, the same thumb that still carried a dark half-moon of grease under the nail from a toe job he had taken before sunrise. Across the aisle, Vivian's coat had no wrinkle in it. Miles adjusted his cuffs and returned to the table as if the interruption had only proved his point. "Your Honor, what we just witnessed is precisely why temporary distance may be necessary. A child in distress should not be placed in the position of presenting emotional material in court." Caleb looked at him. "She reached for her mother." "Mr. Brooks, please." "She reached for her mother," Caleb repeated softer. The words did not help him. In that room, softness was not evidence. Grief had to be notarized. Love had to arrive in the right font with the right filing stamp through the right office before anyone called it stable. Miles slid the first photograph forward again. The plastic sleeve made a clean whisper against the table. This image was taken at 6:42 a.m. on a school day. Caleb saw himself through their eyes. Slumped in the cab of the tow truck, beard rough, work jacket zipped halfway, mouth slightly open from exhaustion. The crop was tight, too tight. It showed the sleeping man, the dirty windshield, the fast food coffee cup in the holder. It did not show the left edge of the glass where the blue sign of Franklin Children's Clinic reflected backward in the dawn light. Caleb leaned forward. That was outside the clinic. Miles did not look at the reflection. It was outside a vehicle where your daughter could have found you unconscious. "I was waiting for her appointment. After working all night. After keeping our heat on." A low murmur passed through the back benches, not loud enough to be corrected, just loud enough to sting. Caleb heard a woman whisper, "Tow truck driver." Like the words explained everything. Rita Coleman kept her eyes on her report. Her pen tapped twice near the margin, then stopped. Emma's shoulders curled inward. Caleb saw it and swallowed whatever he had been about to say next. He reached into his jacket pocket, took out a folded tissue, and placed it on the table within Emma's reach without touching her hand. That was all he allowed himself. A father reduced to inches. Miles presented the second photograph. Caleb's kitchen. Dishes near the sink. Flour on the counter. A chair pulled out. A drawer left open. "This was taken during an unannounced visit by Mrs. Mercer," Miles said. The home appeared disorganized. Vivian closed her eyes as if the memory pained her. Caleb stared at the image. The corner of Emma's yellow construction paper was visible near the toaster, but the words "Happy Birthday, Mommy" had been cut off by the frame. "She was making a card," he said. "For her mother." Vivian's voice broke in the right place. "I wish that were all it was." Caleb turned his head. Slowly. "You took that picture through my window after I fixed your car in the rain." Vivian did not answer. Miles did. Mrs. Mercer was concerned for the child. Her battery was dead. "Mr. Brooks, I wrote a receipt." "For a family favor?" Miles gave the smallest smile. "That hardly addresses the condition of the home." Caleb felt heat climb behind his eyes, but he forced it down. He thought of Emma behind the door that day, watching him help her grandmother anyway. He thought of Maya telling him once that dignity was not silence. It was choosing which words did not deserve your blood. So he only said, "I didn't charge her because I didn't want Emma to think kindness had to pick sides." For the first time, the judge's pen stopped moving. Not long, just long enough for the room to notice the pause. Rita turned a page too quickly. The paper bent at the corner. Miles moved on before the pause could grow. The third photograph shows Emma alone outside the school office. The image appeared under the lights. Emma on a bench, knees together, backpack in her lap, face turned toward the floor. Caleb's jaw tightened. I was 5 feet away signing a medication form with Mrs. Hayes. You were not in the photograph. Because the photograph was taken from the hallway. Again, Mr. Brooks, the court can only evaluate what is presented. That sentence landed colder than an insult. It was not cruel. It was worse. It was clean. It made unfairness sound like procedure. Emma looked up, her eyes shining, and whispered, "Daddy was there." The aide touched her shoulder again. "Sweetheart, let the adults talk." Caleb's hand closed around his cap, then opened. "Please don't make her feel wrong for telling the truth." Vivian inhaled sharply, as if Caleb had wounded her. "No one is punishing Emma. We are protecting her." Then Rita read from the report again, her voice lower this time. The child has experienced night terrors after therapy and appears emotionally conflicted in the father's home. At the back of the courtroom, Dr. Lena Ortiz sat straighter. Caleb noticed Vivian nod before Rita finished the sentence, and that was when the humiliation shifted into something colder, because Vivian had reacted to a phrase she should not have known was coming. Caleb heard the phrase night terrors after therapy and, for one strange second, the courtroom disappeared. He was back in his own kitchen 2 nights earlier, under the weak yellow light above the stove, with rain ticking against the window and Emma asleep on the couch in one of his old sweatshirts. The purple phone was plugged into the outlet beside the toaster, its cracked screen glowing at 1%, and Caleb had wiped it clean with the corner of his denim sleeve because Emma hated when dust covered her mother's name. He did not keep that phone because he thought it could save him. He kept it because some nights Emma woke up shaking, and the only thing that brought her breathing down was Maya's voice saying her nickname in that tired, gentle way no living person could copy. The house smelled like chicken soup, wet work boots, and the faint burnt metal scent that followed Caleb home from the garage. On the table lay Emma's homework, a half-finished birthday card for Maya, 2 unpaid bills folded under a coffee mug, and Caleb's service log opened to the week's appointments. He had written every shift, every school pickup, every therapy session, every clinic visit in the same square handwriting he used for mileage and engine codes. Not because anyone had asked him to, because after Maya died, paper became the only way he could promise himself he would not let one detail of Emma's life fall through his tired hands. A knock came at the front door just after 8. Emma stirred. Caleb turned off the stove before he opened it. Vivian Mercer stood on the porch beneath a black umbrella, her cream coat buttoned to the throat, her face arranged into concern. Behind her, at the end of the driveway, her sedan clicked weakly and flashed its hazard lights in the rain. "I came to pick up a few of Emma's things," she said. "Her winter boots, some clothes, anything she might need if the court moves quickly." Caleb's hand tightened on the doorframe, but his voice stayed low. "She is not a suitcase, Mrs. Mercer." Vivian looked past him into the kitchen. Her eyes moved over the dishes near the sink, the flour on the counter, the drawer Emma had left open while looking for glitter glue. "I'm trying to be practical. So am I. Your house is cold. The heat kicks slower in the back room. That is exactly what worries me." Caleb stepped aside just enough to keep the rain off her shoes, but not enough to let her walk through the house while Emma was half awake and afraid. On the couch, Emma sat up, hair flattened on one side, small fingers already reaching toward the purple phone. "Daddy." "It's okay, Bug," Caleb said. "Grandma's car is having trouble." Vivian gave a soft laugh without warmth. The battery light came on. "I'll call roadside assistance." Caleb looked past her at the blinking hazards. He had been on his feet since for that morning. His back ached. The electric bill was 3 days late. Vivian had filed papers to take his daughter from him, and he knew any neighbor looking out the window would see him opening the hood of her car like a fool. Still, Emma was watching from the couch. Caleb reached for his work jacket. I'll take a look. Vivian blinked. That isn't necessary. Rain's getting worse. Caleb, Emma shouldn't have to watch grown people punish each other. He said it without anger, which made Vivian's mouth press into a thin, offended line. Outside, rain slid down his neck as he lifted the hood. The engine bay smelled of wet plastic and old acid. Vivian stood under the porch light, dry beneath her umbrella, while Caleb leaned over the battery with a flashlight between his teeth. A loose terminal, corrosion on the clamp, weak charge. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that required a speech. He cleaned the post with a wire brush from his toolbox, tightened the connection, and used his portable jump pack to bring the sedan back to life. When the engine finally turned over, Vivian's headlights washed the driveway in pale gold. Caleb closed the hood and wrote a quick receipt on a carbon pad from his truck. Battery terminal cleaned, temporary jump, no charge, family matter. He put the time, the date, and his address at the top because that was how he wrote every job, even the ones no one paid for. Vivian looked at the paper as if he had handed her a grocery coupon. You don't need to make everything official. It helps me remember. Maybe if you focused less on cars and more on paperwork, you would not be in this position. Caleb folded the receipt once and slipped the copy into his service log. He let the sentence pass through him without answering. Behind the front window, Emma watched with the purple phone pressed to her chest. Vivian's gaze shifted to the kitchen behind her, to the messy counter and the handmade card lying open beside the toaster. Caleb bent to pick up a dropped wrench from the wet driveway. In that moment, Vivian lifted her own phone, fast and quiet, and took a picture through the glass. Emma saw the flash reflect on the window. She did not understand what it meant, only that her grandmother hid the phone back in her purse too quickly. Caleb straightened, rain dripping from his jaw. Drive safe, Mrs. Mercer. Vivian got into the car he had just fixed and pulled away without saying thank you. Caleb went back inside, hung his wet jacket over a chair, and found Emma standing by the table with Maya's phone in one hand and the half-finished birthday card in the other. Did Grandma take a picture because our house is bad? She asked. Caleb crouched, though his knees cracked from the cold. No, baby. Our house is lived in. There's a difference. He plugged the purple phone back into the charger, tucked the repair receipt copy under the service log page to keep it flat, and turned the screen toward Emma so she could see Maya's name still glowing. Only later would that small, rain-spotted receipt prove Vivian had been standing outside Caleb's window because he had chosen to help her. By the time Caleb's rain-spotted repair receipt reached the courtroom table, it no longer looked like kindness. In Miles Grant's hand, the small carbon copy became another sign of disorder, another scrap of a poor man trying to explain too much with too little. He held it between two fingers as if the damp edge might stain him. Your Honor, Mr. Brooks seems to believe a handwritten note from his garage can answer concerns raised by trained professionals. Caleb did not look at Miles. He looked at the receipt itself, at the blue ink that had blurred where rain had fallen. At the time he had written in the corner without thinking it would ever matter. 8:17 p.m. Battery terminal cleaned. No charge. Family matter. Vivian sat perfectly still, her hands folded over her cream purse, her face soft with a grandmother's worry. I never wanted to use that photograph, she said, voice low enough to sound ashamed. But when I saw the kitchen, when I saw how Emma was living, I felt I had no choice. Emma's fingers tightened around the strap of her backpack. Caleb heard the tiny squeak of nylon under her hand. He wanted to tell the judge about the birthday card, the glitter glue, the soup cooling on the stove, the purple phone charging beside the toaster. Instead, he took one breath, then another, the way he had taught Emma. May I see the picture again? He asked. Miles paused. It was too simple a question to object to without looking afraid. The judge nodded. The photograph slid back across the table. Under the fluorescent lights, the kitchen looked worse than Caleb remembered. The frame caught the dishes and the flour, but not the little paper candles Emma had cut out for Maya's card. It caught the open drawer, but not the child-safe scissors on the chair. Caught the mess, but not the reason. Caleb did not argue. He placed the repair receipt beside the photograph and turned both toward the judge. This was after I fixed her car, he said. Same night. Same time. Miles gave a patient smile. That does not change what the image shows. No, Caleb said quietly. But it changes why she was at my window. The room did not go silent, not yet. It only slowed. A clerk looked up. Rita Coleman stopped tapping her pen. In the back row, Dr. Lena Ortiz leaned forward with her elbows on her knees. Vivian blinked once, then smoothed her coat. I was concerned, she said. A grandmother is allowed to be concerned. Of course, Miles added. Concern is not misconduct. The judge looked down at the photograph, then at the receipt, then back to the report in front of her. This court is not making findings on motives right now, she said. We are assessing immediate safety. That should have ended it. It almost did. Then Dr. Ortiz stood. She was not dramatic about it. She simply rose with a folder pressed against her chest. Her gray blazer wrinkled from sitting too long. Her expression careful in the way of someone who had learned not to accuse before she could prove. Your Honor, may I clarify one line in the clinical summary that was read into the record? Miles turned before the judge answered. Dr. Ortiz is not under subpoena for testimony today. I am not testifying to custody, Dr. Ortiz said. I am asking to correct a treatment note attributed to my office. Rita's pen rolled off her folder and tapped the floor. Caleb looked at her. Rita did not bend to pick it up. The judge's eyes narrowed, not in belief, but in caution. What line? Dr. Ortiz opened her folder. Paper whispered. The report submitted to the court states, quote, Emma needs distance from household conflict. She looked down through her glasses. My original note says, Emma regulates fastest with her father when using the breathing routine practiced in session. Emma looked at Caleb. Caleb did not smile. He did not move toward her. But his hand opened on the table as if his body remembered holding her through those breaths. Miles frowned. Clinical summaries are often condensed. Condensed means shortened, Dr. Ortiz said, not reversed. 3 words landed hard enough that even Vivian's tissue stopped moving. Rita finally crouched to retrieve her pen, but her face had changed color. The judge held out one hand. Ms. Coleman, is this your summary?
Rito Svailud.
It was compiled from collateral information and provider notes. Did you alter Dr. Ortiz's language? Not intentionally, Your Honor. There was context from the family. Which family? Caleb asked. His voice was not loud, but every head turned as if it had been. Rita looked at him, then at Vivian, then at the page. Mrs. Mercer helped clarify the family background. She stopped, hearing herself too late. She provided collateral information. Dr. Ortiz's eyes moved slowly to Vivian. Vivian's face held, but her fingers tightened around the clasp of her purse the same way they had tightened when Emma pulled out the purple phone. Miles stepped in smoothly. Collateral information is standard in child welfare review. Private treatment language is not standard for a non-custodial relative, Dr. Ortiz replied. The judge did not answer. She reached for the report and tilted it toward the light. Caleb watched her notice what he had noticed only because he spent his life reading small differences. The spacing around the altered sentence was uneven. The line sat a shade lighter than the rest, and the signature block under Rita's name leaned slightly, as if the page had been scanned twice. Caleb opened his service log with hands that shook only after he placed it flat. That therapy day, he said. I signed Emma in at 4:06. I waited outside the room. Then I took her to get fries because she finished the breathing worksheet. Emma whispered, with extra ketchup. It was such a child's detail that no one corrected her. Dr. Ortiz looked at her, and something in her face softened, but she still did not pretend softness was proof. My office has the sign-in sheet, she said, and the original note. The judge looked to the clerk. Can the court retrieve the e-filing history on the submitted report? Miles's hand went flat against the table. Your Honor, with respect, opening audit logs over a wording dispute risks turning an emergency placement hearing into a fishing expedition. Caleb lowered his eyes to the repair receipt, then to the altered report, Then to the photograph Vivian had taken through his window after he fixed her car. For the first time, those scraps did not look like excuses. They looked like pieces of the same broken thing. And when Vivian whispered, "This is unnecessary," Caleb realized the first real question was not why the report had changed, but who had needed it changed before the judge ever saw him. The question sat in Caleb's mind while the court took a short recess, heavy and cold, because every small piece now pointed toward the same impossible shape. The altered sentence. Vivian's too quick nod. Miles calling the audit log a fishing expedition before the clerk had even touched the computer. But Caleb did not have time to chase the shape. Emma was being moved down the hall to the child welfare waiting room for a supervised transition, and the only thing he could do was walk behind her slowly enough that no one could accuse him of pulling her back. The hallway outside the family courtroom smelled like old carpet, floor cleaner, and vending machine coffee. A security camera blinked red in the corner above a bulletin board covered in parenting class flyers. Rita Coleman walked beside Emma with a clipboard tucked against her ribs. Vivian followed 2 steps behind in her cream coat, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart. Grandma has everything ready. A quiet bedroom, new curtains, no tow truck noise in the middle of the night." Emma's shoulders rose toward her ears. Caleb saw it before anyone else did. He saw the way her left hand reached for the strap of her backpack. He saw the way her breath shortened after the word bedroom, as if a pretty room could be a threat when it meant she would not be home. "Mrs. Mercer," Caleb said quietly. Vivian turned with injured patience. "What now? Please don't sell her a new life while she's trying not to lose the old one." Miles, who had followed them out with his legal pad, gave a soft sigh. "Mr. Brooks, this is exactly the emotional pressure we are trying to avoid." Caleb looked at Emma, not Miles. "I'm not asking her to choose. I'm asking adults to stop choosing out loud over her head." Rita's pen paused above the clipboard. Not a long pause, just enough. They entered the waiting room. It was painted in cheerful colors that did not reach the corners. A plastic dinosaur lay under a chair. A clock ticked too loudly above a locked side door. Emma sat on a blue vinyl couch, knees pressed together, backpack on her lap like a shield. Caleb was told to sit across from her, not beside her. He did. He placed his cap on his knee and folded his hands around it, the oil-dark crescent under his thumbnail visible against the faded fabric. Vivian sat at Emma's other side, close enough for perfume to settle around the child like a second coat. "At my house," Vivian said gently. "You won't have to worry about Daddy being tired all the time." Emma blinked fast. "I don't worry about that. You don't have to defend him." "I'm not. You're just confused." Caleb's jaw moved once, but he said nothing. Rita wrote something down. The scratch of her pen sounded louder than it should have. Then the locked side door opened with a hard metallic snap. It was only a staff member coming through with a stack of files, but the sound cracked through the room like a dropped pan. Emma flinched so hard the purple phone shifted inside her backpack and knocked against a plastic pencil case. Her breath caught. Once, twice, then too fast. Her face went pale around the mouth. Vivian reached for her. "See?" she whispered, not as softly as she thought. "This is what I mean." Caleb did not stand right away. He looked at Rita. "May I help her use the breathing routine from therapy?" Rita hesitated, caught between the report in her hand and the child in front of her. "No physical contact unless she asks." "Understood." Caleb slid from the chair to one knee, slow enough for the camera to see every inch. He stayed 3 feet away. "Emma," he said, voice low, "look at my cap." Emma's eyes moved to the cap because it was familiar, sweat dark along the band, the little frayed thread near the bill that she always picked at during long drives. "For in," Caleb said. He raised 4 fingers. "For out." Vivian made a small frustrated sound. Miles stepped closer. "This is coaching." Caleb did not look up. "It's breathing. You are influencing her emotional state. She's having a panic response." Rita's pen stopped completely. The air conditioner hummed above them. Even the child at the corner table stopped pushing crayons across the paper. Caleb set his cap on the floor between himself and Emma, not touching her, not crowding her. "You don't have to be brave for court," he said. "Just breathe for you." Emma pulled in one shaky breath. Caleb counted on his fingers, silent after the first number. 1, 2, 3, 4. He exhaled with her. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 40 seconds passed on the clock. Then 42. Emma's shoulders lowered. Her hand unclenched from the backpack strap. A tear ran down her cheek, but her breathing returned to something human. Vivian's expression tightened. Just a little, because the room had watched the opposite of her story happen in real time. Rita looked up at the camera in the corner. For the first time all day, she seemed to remember it was there. "I need the hallway and waiting room footage preserved," she said to the aide by the door. Miles turned toward her. "Ms. Coleman, let's not overstate a single moment." Rita did not answer him. She wrote a new line on her clipboard, slower now, pressing hard enough that the paper dented. Caleb remained on one knee until Emma nodded that she was okay. Only then did he sit back in the chair. He did not smile. He did not look victorious. He reached into his jacket, took out the folded therapy worksheet Dr. Ortiz had given them months ago, and placed it on the low table. The paper was soft at the creases, with Emma's crayon rainbow in one corner and Caleb Brooks written in blue ink beside the words caregiver practiced regulation routine. Rita stared at the signature. Miles saw it too and immediately said, "Again, that may show participation. It does not resolve custody." "No," Caleb said. "It shows I listened when her doctor taught me how to help my child." Emma's fingers slipped into her backpack and touched the purple phone, just for a second. Vivian noticed. Her voice dropped, but not enough. "That phone keeps making her choose him." Rita's eyes lifted from the worksheet to Vivian's face. The aide glanced at the red blinking camera. And down the hall, the clerk from the courtroom stepped out holding a printed notice from the e-filing system, asking why an attachment named for Emma, "If I'm Not There," had appeared in the original exhibit list but was no longer in the file. The printed notice looked too ordinary for the weight it carried. It was just a pale sheet from the courthouse printer, still warm at the edges, with faint gray lines and a file name sitting in the middle like a sentence someone had tried to bury. "For Emma, if I'm not there." The clerk held it with both hands, not because the paper was fragile, but because the room around it had become fragile. The waiting room clock kept ticking. The air conditioner hummed above the blue vinyl couch. Emma's breathing had finally steadied, yet her fingers stayed inside her backpack, touching the shape of the purple phone as if it might vanish if she let go. Caleb read the file name once, then again. He did not reach for the page. He did not shout that he had been right. He only looked at the clerk and asked, "Was that in the file before today?" The clerk's eyes moved toward Rita, then toward Miles Grant standing in the hallway with his legal pad pressed flat against his chest. "It appears in the original exhibit list," she said carefully, "but the attachment is not currently viewable in the active case packet." Miles stepped forward with the kind of calm that cost money. "Technical errors happen in e-filing systems every day." "Then let's fix it," Caleb said. Miles smiled without warmth. "Mr. Brooks, this is not an auto shop. You do not fix a legal record by tightening a loose screw." Caleb looked down at his hands. The grease under one thumbnail had survived 3 washings, and for a second he felt every person in that hallway seeing the mechanic before they saw the father. Then Emma shifted on the couch, and the small movement pulled him back to what mattered. "No," he said softly. "You fix it by checking what changed." Rita's face tightened because it was such a simple sentence. The clerk did not answer Miles. She walked back toward the courtroom office, the notice in her hand, and the rest of them followed at a slow, uneasy pace. The small records room behind the clerk station was not built for drama. It had beige walls, a humming copier, a metal desk with tape marks on the edge, and a computer monitor angled away from the public counter. A half-eaten granola bar sat beside a stack of custody forms. The clerk typed in silence while the judge's assistant stood near the door, watching without speaking. Rita held her clipboard against her stomach now, no longer using it like armor. Dr. Lena Ortiz arrived with her original file from the clinic, a worn manila folder with Emma's initials written in blue ink. Mrs. Hayes, Emma's teacher, had been called from the school and appeared 20 minutes later with rain on the shoulders of her cardigan and a folded paper clutched in her hand. She looked at Caleb first, not with pity, but with recognition. "I have the email Maya sent me," she said. Vivian's head lifted sharply. "Why would my daughter email you?" Mrs. Hayes did not answer her. She gave the page to the clerk. Caleb saw the subject line before anyone read it aloud. "For Emma, if I'm not there." His chest tightened so hard he had to place one hand on the edge of the counter. He remembered Maya in the hospital bed, thinner than she wanted him to see, joking that he folded Emma's socks wrong but somehow always remembered the inhaler. He remembered her telling him, "If I can't explain things later, don't let them make you feel small." He had thought she meant grief. He had not known she meant this. The email was not long. It was practical, like Maya when she was afraid and refusing to sound afraid. It listed Emma's medication schedule, the breathing routine from Dr. Ortiz, the pickup plan, the foods that upset Emma's stomach when she was anxious, and the sentence that made Mrs. Hayes lower her voice. Caleb knows all of this because Caleb has been the one doing it. The copier stopped humming. No one had touched it. The silence felt deeper because a machine had gone quiet too. Dr. Ortiz opened her clinic folder and slid out the original treatment note. "This matches my recommendations," she said. "The language in the submitted summary does not." Rita looked at the floor. "I compiled from several sources." "Including Mrs. Mercer?" the clerk asked. Rita's lips parted, then closed. Miles stepped in before she could answer. "Collateral family sources are entirely appropriate." Dr. Ortiz turned a page. "Not when the collateral source has access to protected treatment details and the treating provider's conclusion is reversed." Vivian's face remained composed, but her hand disappeared into her purse and came back empty, as if she had reached for her phone and thought better of it. Caleb noticed. He did not point it out. Not yet. He had learned around engines that if you pulled too hard on one wire, you could tear the whole harness before you found the short. The clerk clicked through the audit log. Dates appeared on the screen in narrow columns. Original exhibit list uploaded. Attachment received. Request to reorganize exhibits. Active packet updated. Attachment unavailable. "Who requested the reorganization?" the judge's assistant asked. The clerk hesitated. "The request came through Mr. Grant's office." Miles's voice stayed smooth. "Administrative cleanup. Nothing more." "Then the attachment should still be in the packet," Caleb said. Miles turned to him. "You are making accusations you do not understand." Caleb felt the old temptation rise, sharp and hot. He wanted to say Vivian had photographed his kitchen through a window after he fixed her car. He wanted to say the therapy note had been twisted. He wanted to say the hallway camera had just shown Emma calming with him while the report said the opposite. But Emma was sitting on a chair outside the records room with her knees tucked together, listening for every adult voice. So Caleb swallowed the anger and said only, "I'm asking the court to keep the evidence safe." That sentence changed Rita more than any accusation would have. She looked through the glass wall at Emma, then down at her own report, and the paper trembled once in her hand. Mrs. Hayes unfolded another page. Maya also gave the school permission to contact Caleb first for any emotional episodes or medical issues. It is in Emma's school record. The clerk scanned it. Caleb's name appeared beside emergency contact, medication pickup, therapy coordination, and authorized dismissal. Not once, not casually, over and over in the steady pattern of a parent who showed up. Then Dr. Ortiz placed a copy of Maya's hospital discharge note beside the school record. "This matters," she said. "Mrs. Mercer has suggested Maya was not thinking clearly when she wrote these emails. The hospital note states alert, oriented, capable of medical and family decisions." Vivian's voice sharpened for the first time. Maya was scared when she recorded that. Everyone turned. The word recorded hung in the room before anyone touched it. The purple phone was still in Emma's backpack. The voicemail had not been played. The court had not confirmed when it was made. Caleb looked at Vivian and Vivian looked. Away too late. Miles placed a hand lightly on her arm. Grief speaks imprecisely, he said. Let's not punish a mother for pain. It was a beautiful sentence. It almost worked. Then the clerk's computer chimed. A carrier record request had been preliminarily acknowledged, and the judge's assistant read the notice on the screen. The court could verify metadata if the physical phone was preserved. Emma saw the adults looking toward her backpack and clutched it tight. Caleb went to one knee in front of her, careful not to block the camera in the hall. Bug, he said. The court needs to check Mommy's phone. Emma's eyes filled instantly. Are they taking her voice? Caleb's face broke for only a second before he gathered it back together.
No.
We're not giving Mommy away. We're letting the truth protect her words. Emma stared at him, then slowly unzipped the backpack. The purple phone came out with the silver star sticker catching the fluorescent light. Caleb did not take it from her. He let her place it into the evidence envelope herself, and when the clerk sealed it, the sound of the adhesive strip closing was small but final. Vivian whispered, "This is unnecessary." Caleb looked at the sealed envelope, the missing attachment notice, the original therapy note, the school email, the hospital tag, the service log under his arm, and the repair receipt still folded inside it. For the first time, the truth was no longer a father's plea against polished paperwork. It was a chain, and it had become too heavy to handle behind a closed office door. The emergency hearing began in the same courtroom that had almost carried Emma away, but it did not feel like the same room. The morning light had shifted, falling pale and flat across the seal behind the judge's bench. The rows were fuller now. Dr. Lena Ortiz sat near the aisle with her clinic folder on her lap. Mrs. Hayes held a school record envelope against her cardigan. Rita Coleman sat alone at the side table, her clipboard closed for the first time all day. On the clerk's desk lay a sealed evidence envelope containing Maya's purple phone, the cracked screen hidden but somehow still present in everyone's mind. Caleb walked in with Emma beside him and his service log tucked under one arm. He did not look like a man about to win. He looked like a man who had slept badly, shaved in a courthouse bathroom, and reminded himself 100 times not to let anger become the loudest thing his daughter remembered. Emma held the edge of his denim jacket with 2 fingers, not his hand, not because she did not want to, but because someone might say he was guiding her. Caleb noticed and bent slightly. "You can stand behind Dr. Ortiz if you want." Emma shook her head.
I'm okay.
Her voice was small, but it stayed steady. Vivian entered after them in the same cream coat, carrying grief like a polished object. Miles Grant followed with a new folder, thicker than before, his tie straight, his face calm. He gave the judge a respectful nod and did not glance at the sealed phone. That was how Caleb knew he was afraid of it. The judge took her seat. This emergency review is being reopened for the limited purpose of examining discrepancies in the submitted record and determining whether the temporary placement order should remain in effect. Her voice was even, but the room heard the word discrepancies. It changed the floor under everyone. Miles rose first. "Your Honor, before this proceeding becomes a trial by sentiment, I want to be clear. Mrs. Mercer is a grieving mother and grandmother. Any administrative irregularities should not erase the central concern. Mr. Brooks is overwhelmed. He works nights. He has limited income. He has relied on informal systems instead of proper support." He said informal systems as though Caleb's lunch notes, clinic sign-ins, tow truck mileage, and hand-labeled folders were weeds growing through a sidewalk. Vivian lowered her head at the perfect moment. "I loved my daughter," she said. "I am only trying to keep Emma from losing more than she already has." For a moment it almost worked. The room softened around her. Even Rita looked toward Vivian with the old habit of believing polished sorrow. Miles slid a page forward. Mrs. Mercer never intended to mislead the court. She provided context. The court acted because the documents taken together showed instability. Caleb placed one hand on his service log, not to present it yet, just to keep himself still. The judge looked to the clerk. "Begin with the evidence chain." The clerk opened the first folder. No one rushed. That made it heavier. The sealed purple phone was marked as Evidence Item 1, preserved for metadata and carrier verification. The clerk did not play it. She only confirmed the device was logged, sealed, and linked to the file name visible on the active phone screen before it was secured. Mom, final voicemail. Emma stared at the envelope. Caleb saw her throat move when she swallowed. He wanted to cover the phone, cover her eyes, cover the whole world from using Maya's voice as a tool. Instead, he stood still. The second item was Caleb's service log. The pages looked plain under the court lights. Handwritten dates, mileage, tire changes, tow addresses, school pickups, clinic visits, grocery stops. Miles gave a small sigh. Again, Your Honor, self-created logs are limited. The judge did not respond. The clerk placed the clinic sign-in sheet beside the log. Same day, same time. Caleb Brooks, signed at 4:06 p.m. Then came the therapy worksheet, creased from months inside a kitchen drawer, with Emma's crayon rainbow in the corner and Caleb's signature beside caregiver practiced regulation routine. Dr. Ortiz spoke only when asked. That is my worksheet. I gave it to Mr. Brooks. The breathing routine observed in the waiting room matches what we practiced in treatment. Miles lifted his chin. One calm moment does not determine custody. No, Dr. Ortiz said, but it contradicts a report stating he did not participate. The first silence came small. A chair in the back stopped creaking. The air conditioner grew louder. Rita's eyes dropped to the table. The judge turned the next page. Camera footage. The clerk nodded to the monitor angled toward the bench. The waiting room video played without sound at first. Emma flinching at the door, Vivian leaning close, Caleb asking permission, then kneeling at a distance. For fingers raised, for fingers lowered. Emma's shoulders settling. Caleb not touching her. The timestamp glowed in the corner. Rito requested that a note be added to the record. Her voice cracked once. My original observation did not include the full context of that incident. Miles stood quickly. Ms. Coleman's later reflection should not be treated as proof of misconduct. She was operating under pressure with limited time and multiple sources. The judge looked at him. Including Mrs. Mercer? Miles paused. It was less than a second, but enough. Including family collateral, yes. Vivian folded her hands tighter. The next evidence item was the repair receipt. A tiny, rain-stained carbon copy. Battery terminal cleaned. Temporary jump. No charge. Family matter. Date. Time. Address. Miles almost smiled again, sensing weakness. A receipt for a car repair does not establish child safety. Caleb finally spoke. It establishes why she was outside my window. The clerk placed Vivian's kitchen photograph beside the receipt. The timestamp matched the night of the repair. Mrs. Hayes leaned forward when she saw the cropped counter. Emma whispered, My card was there. The judge looked at her gently. You do not have to explain, Emma. It said Happy Birthday, Mommy, Emma said, barely louder than paper sliding. Vivian closed her eyes. Children remember things through emotion. Caleb's voice stayed low. So do adults. The second retention spike came when Miles produced his new explanation. He turned toward the bench with practiced restraint. Your Honor, even if the photo was taken during a difficult family interaction, Mrs. Mercer had reason to document conditions. She did not force disorder into that home. She witnessed it. Vivian nodded, tears finally wetting the tissue. I was scared. Maya would have been scared. That sentence moved through the room like smoke. For one breath, Caleb looked smaller again. The tired father, the messy kitchen, the grandmother with money and a clean coat saying she knew what her dead daughter would want. Then Mrs. Hayes opened her envelope. Maya told me what she wanted. The room shifted toward her. The clerk entered the school email into the record. Subject: For Emma, if I'm not there. The teacher's voice trembled, but the words did not. Maya had listed Emma's medication, her panic triggers, the pickup routine, Caleb as primary contact, Caleb as the one who knew the breathing method, Caleb as the parent to call first. Dr. Ortiz added the hospital note confirming Maya was alert, oriented, and capable of family decisions when those instructions were made. Vivian's composure thinned. She only said that because Caleb was in the room. The sentence came out sharper than she meant. Caleb did not move. Miles turned toward her too slowly. The judge looked to the clerk. Visitor log. Paper changed hands. The clerk read the entry. At the time Maya recorded the message and sent the email, Caleb Brooks was signed out of the room. Pharmacy pickup. Pediatric medication. Receipt attached. The pharmacy receipt was placed beside the hospital log. A narrow strip of paper with Caleb's name, the time, and Emma's prescription printed in fading ink. Vivian's face emptied. Dr. Ortiz looked at the timeline, then at the sealed phone. Rita pressed her fingers to her mouth. Miles no longer smiled. Caleb's eyes burned, but he did not use the moment to strike back. He only said, "I don't need my wife to make me look good. I need the court to stop making her words disappear." The judge sat back. For the first time, she looked not at Caleb's jacket, not at Vivian's coat, not at Miles's folder, but at the evidence laid across the table like a road leading to one door. "The court has received sufficient foundation to review the recording," she said. Emma's fingers tightened on Caleb's sleeve. The clerk reached for the sealed envelope, broke the strip, and placed the purple phone on the table with the cracked screen facing up, waiting for the final voice in the room to be heard. The clerk placed Maya's purple phone on the courtroom table with the cracked screen facing up, and for a moment no one reached for it. The silver star sticker caught the overhead light. The evidence envelope lay open beside it, its broken seal curling like a torn promise. Emma stood so still behind Dr. Ortiz that Caleb could hear her breathing from where he stood, small and uneven, like she was trying not to take up too much space in a room full of adults. The judge looked at the clerk. "Metadata has been verified?" "Yes, Your Honor," the clerk said. "Carrier record, device timestamp, and hospital timeline are consistent." Miles Grant's pen stopped above his legal pad. Vivian Mercer stared at the phone as if it had become something alive. Caleb did not step forward until the judge looked at Emma. "Emma, you do not have to touch the phone if you do not want to. The clerk can press play." Emma looked at Caleb. He did not nod right away. He wanted to tell her she had already done enough. He wanted to carry every adult burden in the room and leave her with crayons, cereal, spelling words, and the right to miss her mother without making it evidence. But Emma's fingers loosened from his sleeve, and she whispered, "I want Mommy to say it." Caleb swallowed and stepped back half a pace, hands open at his sides, just as he had done before. "Then you can," he said softly. "Only if you want." Emma walked to the table. The courtroom did not move.
No chair kreakev.
No paper shifted. Even the fluorescent buzz seemed to pull itself higher into the ceiling. Vivian's lips parted. "Emma, sweetheart," she began. The judge raised one hand. "Mrs. Mercer." That was all. One warning. One line Vivian could not cross. Emma put one small finger on the crack screen. The phone asked for no password because the voicemail had been left open in the evidence viewer. The words "Mom, final voicemail" glowed in pale white letters. Emma pressed play. At first there was only air. A thin hospital room sound. The soft beep of a monitor somewhere behind the receiver. A rustle of sheets. Then Maya Brooks's voice came through, weaker than memory but clear enough to make Caleb grip the back of his chair. "Hey, baby girl," Maya said, and Emma's face folded for a second before she held herself together. "If you're hearing this, it means Mommy couldn't come home the way we prayed." Caleb closed his eyes. Not for long. Just long enough to survive the first sentence. Maya breathed in the recording, and the room breathed with her. "Caleb, if they ever make you feel like you weren't enough, don't believe them. You were the one who learned her medicine chart. You were the one who slept in that awful plastic hospital chair. You were the one who made her laugh when I couldn't lift my head." Vivian's tissue slipped from her fingers and landed on the polished floor without a sound anyone should have heard. But everyone did. Maya continued, each word thin, deliberate, chosen by a woman who knew time had become expensive. "Mom, please listen to me. I know you love Emma, but love is not control. Do not turn my illness into a case against Caleb. Do not use my hospital records to make him look dangerous. He is the only person I trust to raise our daughter if I can't. Vivian put one hand over her mouth. Her eyes did not go to Emma. They went to Miles. The judge saw it. Rita saw it. Caleb saw it and looked away, because watching Vivian break did not feel like winning. The voicemail crackled. There was a faint sound of a door opening in the background. Then Maya's voice again. The real medical file is with Dr. Ortiz. I sent Mrs. Hayes everything Emma needs for school. Her breathing routine, her medicine, her panic triggers. Caleb knows them already, but I wrote them down so nobody could pretend he doesn't. Dr. Ortiz lowered her head. Mrs. Hayes pressed both hands around her envelope. Miles did not move, but the color under his collar changed. Maya's voice softened. Emma, Daddy will not always say the right thing. He will burn toast. He will fold your shirts wrong. He will work too much because he thinks keeping the lights on means keeping you safe. But he is your home. And if Grandma wants to be part of your life, she has to love you without making you choose. The recording ended with a quiet click. Not dramatic, not loud, just a small digital sound that seemed to take every excuse out of the room with it. No one spoke. The air conditioner hummed. Somewhere in the hallway, a cartwheel squeaked and faded away. The judge looked down at the phone, then at the chain of evidence spread across the table. The school email, the therapy note, the hospital discharge record, the pharmacy receipt, the visitor log, the repair receipt, the hallway footage still frozen on the monitor with Caleb kneeling 3 feet from Emma and raising 4 fingers. Each item had been small enough to dismiss alone. Together, they had made the lie too heavy to lift. Miles cleared his throat. Your Honor, in light of the sensitive nature of the material, we would ask that the record be sealed to protect the child. The judge looked at him for a long moment. To protect the child, she said, or to protect the conduct that removed critical evidence from the child's file? Miles's mouth closed. The pen in his hand slipped, struck the edge of the table, and rolled once before stopping against his folder. Rita Coleman's shoulders sank. She did not cry, but her eyes were wet. Your Honor, she said, her voice rough, I need to amend my report. My conclusions relied on incomplete and altered context. Vivian whispered, I was trying to protect her, but this time the sentence had nowhere to stand. It fell flat on the table between the voicemail and the missing exhibit notice. The judge turned to Caleb. He was not looking at her. He was looking at Emma, who stood beside the phone with both hands pressed together, as if she had set down something much heavier than a device. Mr. Brooks, the judge said. Caleb lifted his eyes. This court vacates the temporary emergency placement order effective immediately. Emma Brooks will remain in your care pending a revised review. The court further orders preservation of the full e-filing audit log, review of the altered clinical summary, and referral of the missing exhibit issue to the appropriate disciplinary authority. The words did not hit Caleb all at once. They arrived like water after thirst, too much to swallow quickly. Emma turned toward him. For 1 second, she waited, as if still afraid someone would tell her she was not allowed to move. Caleb looked at the judge. Can I hold my daughter now? The judge's face changed, not with pity, with recognition. Yes, Mr. Brooks. Emma ran 3 steps, no more, and Caleb went down to 1 knee before she reached him so she would not have to jump. He held her carefully, 1 arm around her back, 1 hand over her hair, not crushing, not claiming victory, just making a shelter with his body. Vivian began to sob behind them, but Caleb gently covered Emma's ear with his palm. You're okay, he whispered. You told the truth. Now breathe. The room stayed quiet, not because there was nothing left to say, but because everyone understood that the loudest thing in the courtroom had been a dead mother asking the living to stop bending love into control. And as Caleb held Emma under the seal of the court that had almost taken her, the question left hanging was not whether he had one, but what kind of man he would choose to be now that the truth had finally given him power. The courtroom did not empty the way it had filled. No one whispered over anyone else. No one rushed toward the doors with the sharp confidence of people who thought they understood the story. Chairs slid back softly. Papers were gathered with careful hands. The clerk returned Maya's purple phone to the evidence table only after copying the preservation order. And for the first time all day, the device did not look like a weapon, a disruption, or a problem for the record. It looked like what it had always been to Emma. A mother's voice in a cracked purple case with a silver star sticker pressed crookedly near the corner. Caleb held Emma until her breathing settled against his shoulder. When he finally stood, he kept one hand open at her back, not gripping, not steering, just there. The judge remained on the bench, reviewing the order aloud in a voice that made every word part of the public record. The emergency placement was vacated. Emma Brooks would remain with her father. Dr. Lena Ortiz's original treatment notes would replace the altered summary. Mrs. Hayes's school records would be added to the file. The full e-filing audit log would be preserved. Rita Coleman's report would be sent for supervisory review. Miles Grant's handling of the missing exhibit would be referred to the disciplinary board. Vivian Mercer's petition for emergency custody would be suspended, and any future visitation would be supervised, therapeutic, and conditioned on grief counseling and compliance with the court's boundaries. It was not a dramatic punishment. No one was dragged away. No one shouted. But the room understood the weight of it. The system that had almost taken Emma behind a closed door was now being forced to correct itself in writing. Rita approached Caleb near the aisle after the judge stepped down. Her clipboard was held low, no longer between them like a shield. "Mr. Brooks," she said, and her voice sounded older than it had that morning. "I should have gone to the original providers before I trusted a summary." Caleb looked at her tired face, the smudged ink on her thumb, the crease between her brows that had not been there before. He could have made her smaller. He had the right to. Instead, he glanced down at Emma, who was watching every adult with the alertness of a child who had learned too much about consequences. "Then please do that for the next kid," he said. Rita nodded once, and this time she wrote nothing down. Miles Grant left through the side door without his usual smoothness. His folder slipped slightly under his arm, and one paper slid free onto the floor. He stopped, looked at it, then bent to pick it up himself. No assistant rushed forward. Vivian stayed seated long after everyone else moved. Her cream coat looked less perfect under the afternoon light. The tissue in her hand had fallen apart at the edges. When Caleb passed her, Emma pressed closer to his leg. Vivian saw it and flinched, not because Emma had been cruel, but because the distance between them was finally honest. "Caleb," Vivian said. He stopped. He did not turn Emma toward her. He did not turn her away either. "Not now," he said gently. Vivian swallowed. "I loved Maya. I know. I thought if I could keep Emma close, I could keep something from disappearing." Caleb's eyes lowered to the purple phone in Emma's hands. "You almost made her lose more." Vivian closed her eyes. That sentence did what the voicemail had not finished doing. It did not humiliate her. It made her stand inside the truth without decoration. Caleb waited until she opened her eyes again. "Emma can love you," he said, "but she will not be asked to betray her mother's truth to do it." Vivian nodded, but Caleb saw how hard it was. The judge's order would make sure her nod was not enough. There would be supervised visits. Dr. Ortiz would set the pace. Emma would never again be asked to carry the grief of adults like a school bag. In the hallway, Mrs. Hayes knelt just enough to meet Emma's eyes and handed her the folded copy of Maya's school email. "Your mom wrote this because she knew you deserved grown-ups who remembered the right things," she said. Emma took it with both hands. "Did she say Daddy burns toast?" Mrs. Hayes smiled through tears. "She did." Caleb let out a breath that almost became a laugh, and it was the first sound all day that did not hurt. Outside the courthouse, the sky had gone pale after rain. The sidewalk smelled like wet concrete and exhaust. Caleb's tow truck sat at the curb, old, dented, and faithful, with a booster pack on the passenger floor and his toolbox behind the seat. That truck had been used as proof against him in the morning. By afternoon, it looked different. Not fancy, not rescued by wealth, just honest. A machine that had carried him through night calls, hospital pickups, school mornings, grocery runs, and every tired mile of fatherhood nobody had photographed correctly. Emma climbed into the passenger seat and placed the purple phone carefully in the cup holder, screen facing up. "Can we go home now?" she asked. Caleb buckled her seatbelt, then paused with one hand on the strap. "Yes, baby," he said. "And this time, everybody knows where home is." Weeks later, the first supervised visit happened in a quiet room at Dr. Ortiz's office. Vivian did not bring Miles. She did not bring documents. She brought a small photo album with worn corners and sat across from Emma with both hands visible on the table. "I made my grief louder than your home," she said to Caleb first, because Dr. Ortiz had told her apologies must go to the person harmed, not around him. Caleb did not forgive everything in one sentence. That would have been too easy, and Emma deserved better than easy. But he nodded and let Emma look through the album page by page, choosing what she wanted to ask, choosing when to stop. At the garage, Caleb taped a small sign near the office window a month later. Free safety checks for parents with court, clinic, school, or hospital appointments. No questions. No speeches. Under the counter, his service log stayed open, no longer just a tired man's memory aid, but proof that small, faithful things mattered. The rain-spotted repair receipt sat inside a clear sleeve beside it, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Kindness had been mocked as weakness, then dismissed as disorder, then finally recognized as the first honest timestamp in a room full of polished lies. At closing time, Caleb found Emma sitting on the workbench, listening to Maya's voicemail with one earbud, her feet swinging above the concrete floor. He did not interrupt. He wiped a wrench clean, hung it back in its place, and stood beside her in the soft garage silence while the evening light touched the purple phone. No one clapped. No one announced a miracle. A father simply kept standing where love had placed him, and the truth, after being bent by so many hands, finally rested there too.